we've covered thinking about the web. Let's start actually getting our hands dirty and writing some code. So the web is described in three different languages, and we tear apart the different things that we want to do and put them in those languages. So firstly, we're going to cover this language called HTML, which is all about information, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. Then CSS, which is about making that information look good, about styling, and then JavaScript, which is about interactivity and adding new features. Today, we're going to start with HTML. And we're going to cover a few bits and pieces about HTML, including setting up your project and how you might write this. So, as I said before, HTML is all about displaying information. Not about what things look like, but what they represent. And to give you a better idea of what I mean by that, let's take any old website. For example, this notes website with the notes for this workshop. Now, most browsers have this feature, you might have used it before, called Inspect, which actually allows me to go and peek into the guts of a website. So I'll try and zoom this in so you can get a better view of that. Don't worry about bringing this up yourself. This is purely an example. But we'll see that the information I have here is the text that's on the page. But nowhere does it say that this is big text and this is small text. It says that this is a heading and this is a paragraph. That's what these H1 and P things mean. And I can go and edit these. I am editing my website. And I'm just changing the information that's being represented. Elsewhere, I'm saying that headings should be bigger than my body text, my paragraphs. But there's no reason to say that should be the case. Maybe I want a website where headings are smaller than paragraphs. But we put that elsewhere, and here we're purely concerned with the information that we're displaying. And that's what HTML is all about. So it's also worth noting that this isn't a permanent edit. I'm actually just editing on my laptop. If I refresh the page, it goes back to what it was before. All right, so that's a little bit about the purpose of HTML, purely displaying information. Let's try and set up an empty project so we can actually start writing code. So what I've got open here is, this is Visual Studio Code, the text editor that I recommended, but you can use whatever you want. The first thing that you want to do is open a folder. Now, most text editors have some sort of facility for this, so I'm going to go up to File, and then I'm going to click Open. I thought I clicked Open. It's really not happy with me. What if I click this button? All right, well, I clicked Open Folder, and that was fine. And I'm going to make a new folder called Web Design Tips. So that's the name of my folder. The reason we're making a folder, not just making a file, is because the website is composed of many different files. So it would be good to keep all those files together rather than having them intermingled with something seen in your documents. So we're going to open up that folder. And the first thing that we want to do with this folder is make a blank file for our website. So I'm going to try and make a new file in here. Most text editors have a facility for this. So I'm going to click New File. I'm going to create a file, index.html. And this is our website file. It's called HTML because we're writing an HTML file. That's the language that we're writing in. And it's called index mainly by convention. You could actually call it anything else. But index is a good place to start if you're lacking for names. Now, what we want to do is try and open this up. So in most computers, going into that file and double-clicking on it, or going File Open from your browser, will open it up. Now, what you should see in front of you is a whole bunch of nothing, and that's perfect. It's different from the result of a file that doesn't exist, which is your file was not found. So if you can open a page and see a white screen in front of you in your browser, you're in a good place. So now's a good time to pause for a bit. So what you want to do is create a folder for your website, create an empty index.html file, and once you've done that, because it's a fairly simple task, do a bit of thinking about your website and maybe sketch a few ideas on paper. We'll take a quick breather now to get that done. What we've just done is we've made this folder, we've made an empty file. Now let's start getting some content on the screen, because that's what we really care about. Now, before we opened up the Hackers at Cambridge website, looked into the guts of it, and we saw these weird angle bracket things, strange names like H1. Let's try and look into that and see what all that means. So here's a little bit of a teardown of some HTML. Now, first thing, all HTML files start with this thing called a doc type. It's got an exclamation mark in it. It's got some capital letters. It's confusing, but you just need it to start an HTML document, write it, and then forget about it. And that's all I have to say about that. So after that, you write HTML tags. So tags are made up of, elements are made up of this thing called an opening tag. So you have, in between angle brackets, a name. In this case, that name is the word HTML. And then you have some content, and to say where that element ends, you've got a closing tag, which has this slash and then the same name. And everything inside it, in between those, that opening and closing, is inside that tag. So HTML is one such tag. That means all of the HTML in your website. Everything goes in there. The body tag is everything is in the body of your website. So that's everything the user sees on the web page. There are things that the user doesn't see, and we'll go over that in a moment. And then we have this H1 tag, which is a heading. And it's a part of a numerous number of tags that represent different things. So a heading could be the title of your website or the start of a section in your website. And inside that heading, you have some content. So let's go and write some bits and pieces. So I'm going to go to my text editor, find this file that I have nothing in. I'm going to start writing some content. So I'm going to start with that doc type thing that we're talking about. That starts the HTML document. I'm going to create an HTML tag, and my text editor nicely creates the closing tag for me. In this case, I'll delete it and write out the closing tag just to make it, wrote it out for me. I can't fight it, but it's got this angle bracket, then the slash, and then the HTML to indicate it's closing. Now, when I press enter, nicely indents everything inside the tag for me as well. That's a nice feature. And I can write out the word body for that body tag. And inside there, I'm going to put an H1 tag, and I'm going to call it web design tips. So first thing I did was I saved the file. That's very important. And then after I'm done that, you can copy and paste that from the notes website as well, by the way. After I'm done that, I'm going to refresh the page, and then I'm going to see the phrase web design tips. So now I've got some content in front of me. I've gone from an empty screen to a screen with some words. Ugly words, but words nonetheless. So moving on, what are other kinds of tags that we can use? So by and large, the names of tags have meaning. So for example, this H1 tag means heading level 1. So by that we mean the top level heading in a website, the first one that you'll see. P means a paragraph. So when you've got long flow text, you use a paragraph. H2 is a heading level 2. So you might think of those as subheadings. And you can have H3, H4, H5, and H6 to indicate structures of headings. We've got another P tag here, and for example, we can mark text as well. So we've got this EM element, which means emphasized, and we've got this strong element, which means strong. So what these are just fancy words for italics and bold. The reason they've got a slightly different name is because we're trying to differentiate what this information is. It's emphasized text as opposed to how it's styled, which is italic. We might think of a world where emphasized text is not italic, but maybe a different color, for example. And we don't want to impose those limits on people. So let's try and put some of this to use and write out some content. So I'm going to write a paragraph, and I'm going to say, web design is important to do well. And maybe I'll emphasize this well right here. So I'm going to wrap it in EM tags. And I'm going to say, use this website. And maybe I'll wrap that in strong. Oh, sorry, you can't see all the text I'm writing, so I'm just going to go and add word wrap. Maybe. Why is that doing that? Okay, I'm just going to put line breaks in manually. Sorry about that. I'll try and fix that for next time. Worth noting that these line breaks that I'm putting in now don't actually impact the flow of text on the website. So I can format my text in a way that's easy for me to read the HTML, and then the text in the website is unaffected. So I'm going to say, strong, use this website to achieve, well, to make websites look good. Didn't say I'd be using good structures of words. Okay, so I'm going to save that and then take a look at the result. And hey presto, what we see is web design is important to do well, and we'll see that well is emphasized or italicized, and use this website is strong or bold to make websites look good. If I actually did want to do a line break, I could add another paragraph. And actually what I do want to do is make a second level heading called resources. So, and use these resources to improve your web design. And at the bottom, I'm going to put some links to websites, but we don't know how to do that yet. But what we'll see here is we've got resources, and use these resources to improve your web design. Great. So to sum up, what we want to do here is add your setup code for an HTML document. Don't forget the doc type, your HTML, and your body tags, and then inside goes all the stuff you want people to see. Try to create some content with those H1 to 6, P, EM, and strong tags we've just discussed. But if you want to go a little bit further, try and find out what some other tags do. For example, here's a list, small, UL, OL, and table. So these tags might be things that you want to use in your everyday, but I'll leave it to you to explore and find out what they are.